How's it going, everyone? It's Daz. Merry Christmas Eve, or whenever you watch this. Maybe it's Merry Christmas. Maybe it's a week after Christmas. Who the hell knows? So anyway, I want to go ahead and do a video, because why not? About the Polymega, and I was going to show off some of the stuff that I recently bought for it, and then show you why you may be interested in a Polymega. I felt like this would be only fair, given that I basically ripped it apart before in my last video. So, first off, I'm very prepared, by the way. So, professionalism. We got first game I got yesterday was Firepower 2000. This is published by Sunsoft, but not made by them, and it kind of shows this is a type of game that you would think would have Robotron controls. Like use the face buttons on a Super Nintendo controller on the right to aim. But instead, it's one of those games where you aim by moving your D-pad, which moves your tank around. You can hold down Y to lock your fire in one direction, but it's incredibly annoying. And none of the weapons that you get are particularly powerful, so you never really feel like you're getting ahead of the game, if that makes any sense. I don't know. But hey, yeah, it's there. Next. Super Off-Road, or I guess I should be more specific, Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Off-Road for the NES. I only ever had the Super Nintendo version back in the day. In fact, actually, I didn't get the Super Nintendo version until very late. My friend had the Super Nintendo version back in the day, and for whatever reason, man, uh, it was one of those games that we always played, and it wasn't because I wanted to play it, it was because he wanted to play it. And I think looking back, the reason is it's basically a four picture like one track always on screen, right? And it's just four racers going through like a little maze of a track, and it feels like piloting like an RC car, basically, right? And I think the reason why you want to play is because playing by yourself sucks, and playing with other people is way more fun. Uh, this feels like the Super Nintendo game, except with worse graphics. I don't think that the physics, if you want to call them that, feel as good either. It's kind of like a crappy version of the arcade game, frankly, if I had to be honest with you. But, this is actually getting kind of hard to find for a cheap, common, undesirable game, if that makes any sense. Next, we have Robotron 64. Speaking of Robotron, this is a phenomenal game, by the way. Whether you get the PlayStation version or the 64 version, it really doesn't matter. Really, really, really good game. I'm not particularly good at it, but really good game. You control with the D-pad and you aim with the C buttons. Uh, Again, really wish Firepower 2000 controlled like this because it's really good shit. This is not an expensive game. You're looking at basically 10, 12 bucks at max. Uh, yes, I know this has Sharpie on it. It fucking bothers me. The asshole who sold this to me had the price sticker over the Sharpie, so I didn't know. There was another copy there, but the label was all like, you know, terrible. So I can get that off. It's not a big deal, but good game regardless. Next, Virtual Racing for the Sega Genesis. This is one of those special SVP chips. So think if you're a Nintendo fanboy, think FX chip, right? Uh, Very good game. I'm actually going to be using this as an example of how to load a cartridge into the system today. So, woo, fun. I'll leave that out. I have to say, by the way, Sega 3D games were like faster and way more responsive as a Nintendo guy from back in the day. I'm used to like Stunt Race FX and Vortex and Star Fox, and all those games share the same DNA of it being like you put in an input and then like 3 seconds later something happens. This is not giving you that problem. However, I did notice that the resolution is lower. It makes like racing a little harder, but we'll leave that there. Next, no one will care about this, but this is a childhood game for me. I got an incomplete box copy of NES Pro Action Football. This game, this game is phenomenal. I love this game. It's still fun. Apparently, my skills have not waned after all these years, and I ended up beating uh, the CPU like what was it, 67-0. I would have been 69-0 if I didn't miss like two extra kicks, but still, really, really good game. Extraordinarily cheap. Like this in box was like $10. Loose, it's just a few bucks. Definitely recommend that. And then one giant hole in the collection here was the complete lack of Street Fighter 2, at least on the SNES. The Genesis one has that, but I'm used to the SNES version. They had a loose copy of Street Fighter 2 for like $15, but they had Turbo in the box. And so I figured of the two, Turbo's got to be better, right? I don't know. I like Turbo. Fast fighters, really good shape for what it is. Has a manual, cart, even has a little dust sleeve. Ew. Anyway, even comes with that little white manual that you got with Super Nintendo games. It's like a registration card. Actually, for this was kind of cool. So this comes with little, because this is like one of those four score games, so you play with like four people. And this came with like these little cards, which I guess tell you plays or something. I don't know. I'm not using them, but they're there nonetheless, right? Kind of interesting. I don't know if I just forgot about this or if this game's unique, but there's like a piece of fucking styrofoam that's like permanently in the bottom there that you can't see. You can't see? I can see. Just a block of styrofoam. I guess because the card's not long enough for the long box. Kind of makes me wonder why the box was that long to begin with. But anyway, moving on. Those are my finds. So I've loaded all of them up. Technically, I loaded all of them up yesterday. Uh, but I deleted virtual racing so I could show you how this works. And then I'm going to go over the positives of the Polymega because maybe it's right for you. Because it's right for me. And if it's right for me, it should be right for you. Maybe. We'll see. So, what do? Go to the home screen here, take your cart, make sure that you have the right module. So, press this button here on the side, yeah. That'll disconnect your controller, of course, unless you're using a USB controller. And you put in the right module. Now, for me, I already had the right module in place, but each one essentially looks like this. It gives you control ports for original OEM controllers of whatever said system. It'll tell you what the system is here, give you a cartridge slot, or in the case of the PC Engine, give you a cartridge slot up in the front, because it just has a HuCard slot here and nothing up here. But typically, everything's on the top. Connects in the back, and it slides on these little grooves. So you just take this, put it here, line it up, and ta-da! And I have one for Genesis, one for NES, one for SNES, one for 64, and one for PC Engine. So I got them all. Well, I don't have them all. I have them all except for the Atari one, but then it's Atari. Who cares about Atari? Anyway, Genesis is like one of the better controllers. It's actually phenomenal. Uh, no joke. If you don't have a Polymega and you never want to have a Polymega, I would still get this controller. It's that good. Real nice, thick, chunky. D-pad's great, buttons are great. You can use it on a Sega Genesis because that's all this is. Anyway, take this. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to hold right on D-pad. It'll recognize what the controller is, which is awfully nice. One of those buttons works. Anyway, take this, plug it in. I'm going to show you how quick this is. These cartridge slots are fucking tight. Put that in. And there it is. Hit A to manage, add to collection and install. That's my M.2, so that's where I put everything. Okay, it's done. Like literally the whole game. It's done. No progress bar, no nothing. You'll get a progress bar for CD-based games, um, which I just got all my Saturn stuff done. But this is essentially useless. It's never running anything off the game anyway. If I didn't add it to my collection, it's just gonna put the cartridge data in temporary RAM and run it that way. I did have a couple interesting experiences yesterday that I figured I'd share with you. Okay. This game booted to the title screen and then black screened. Turns out nobody likes this game, and it was dirty as hell because no one had played it in God knows how many years. Literally is like black soot. So, if you ever get like something like that, delete it from your collection. You basically just select it, manage, remove from collection. Okay. Clean it and try again. Worked fine. Second little common, not common, but every once in a while I get a little snafu like this. Robotron, for whatever reason, is a weird game. My friend tried to go ahead and put Robotron on my Polymega when he had it, but his copy did not want to work. It would not read. That sucks. This copy did read, but when it came up, it didn't show like a screenshot. It didn't recognize what it was. It just said game media. However, if you ever encounter something like that, all you have to do is go ahead and hit manage again and go into the library of games and select it. And then it matches that, puts it in a correct system folder, gives it a correct, icon and all that. So even when the system messes up, it's quite efficient. Let me show you around. Let me show you around, I said. There we go. It'll be a little easier to see. So, start from the beginning. Polymega Collection, those are the CD-based games, yeah. So they sell these, they're little compilation discs. I have nearly all of them. I have all the ones that matter. I don't need like fucking Adventure for the 2600, if you know what I mean. I'm not an Atari guy, in case you haven't figured out. I like Atari, like arcade Atari, like Asteroids and that type of shit, but I don't like Atari home consoles. Anyway, yeah. So all these are here. So I want to play like Drift Out. I select that. And then these are all the games that came on that Drift Out disc. So it does have arcade games, but you just have to buy them via those CDs. I think they're like $39.99 a disc. So if you want to save yourself some cash, share amongst friends because it treats it like any other burned CD. And I'll get into that in a second. So, NES. These are all the NES games that I have. SNES. So those are all the SNES games I have. In case you're wondering, when you see something like this, yes, you have. Now it doesn't come stock like this. Usually you have a Super Nintendo and then a Super Famicom and then an NES and a Famicom separate tabs, but you can set the menu to combine the two, which I personally prefer. Because like if I have Mega Drive games and Genesis games, I don't want to forget that like I have Streets of Rage, but it's just the Japanese Streets of Rage, and then go out and buy Streets of Rage, and then I realize I had it at home. So I'd rather have everything on one spot. So you're going to see Super Famicom on the little tab on the right, or SNES on the right. You can also go ahead and apply patches. I don't know what the fuck I just did there. There we go. You can apply patches for language patches. You just make a folder that says patches, and you put them in there on your micro SD card. which is one of the 3 different storage options I have on this console. You have internal storage, which isn't very much, M.2 slot, which is where obviously all the games are saved, and then I have BIOSes and patches on the micro SD. And I'll show you that in a second. But basically, you can put the original BIOSes for Sega Saturn, PlayStation, Neo Geo CD, what am I missing? PC Engine CD. Um, did I say Sega CD or I don't know. And yeah, it'll actually have the proper BIOS. So we got 64, and we'll show you some gameplay here in a second. Genesis, I'm not going to go through all these. Sega CD, it does do 32X, believe it or not. The Genesis module accepts 32X cartridges. Sega Saturn, TurboGrafx 16, TurboGrafx CD, and this includes PC Engine, by the way. Super Graphics, Neo Geo CD, and the almighty PlayStation. Extended set, in case you're wondering, are games that it technically plays, but it doesn't know what the hell it is. These, for example, Lancer and Darius, they're inside their respective folders. The same thing with Cotton and all. But basically, this is where it recognizes that something's a little funky and it doesn't know exactly what it is. It's gone in those folders because I've told it to go in those folders. Does that make any sense? But it's put there for just as like a reminder that they're special. Anyway, past that point, you can see the latest games that you've been playing, which as you can see here, these are the latest games that I've been playing. You can see the ones that you've most recently added. So you can obviously tell that I was staying up until 5 o'clock in the morning, putting all these Sega Saturn games on here. Yeah, that kind of sucked. I've been doing that for like weeks now. So at least Sega Saturn's done. Next is PlayStation, and then I'm done, because all the other CD-based games, I already have everything on there. And the cartridges are kind of what the cartridges are. Basically, when I get more cartridges, I upload them. And past that, I basically have most of the games I want anyway. And it just keeps going, by the way. It's pretty good for memory. So it'll keep going. It knows everything and all the order. So here's my Panzer Dragoon Saga, all 4 parts. Nest Maker. So these 2 things here are, if you were lucky to get a Polymega that had the little bonus pack of games, they gave you these for free. So here's some like PC Engine games that you get for free that you don't need to go find and buy. If you get a refurb unit, most likely you'll get one that has these games on it, because it'll be an original unit that had broken on somebody, and then, you know, yeah, they just refurbed it. The new ones that come out right now probably won't have it, so keep that in mind. So let's just let's play some games. So since we put the Genesis game on there, I'll show you it first, so you can see that my upload actually worked. So there's virtual racing. Sounds low, I know. I just have it going through headphones so I could talk. But as you can see, emulation is perfect across the board. The only system that you have to be mindful of is Nintendo 64, in the fact that you want to make sure that you have a Wi-Fi connection, because then it'll download shaders for the game. If you don't have Wi-Fi on, it will be fine eventually, but it will stutter like mad for quite some time as the shaders go ahead and start streaming in. Once they're streamed in, it'll be fine, but it's super annoying if you're like me and you just want to jump in and play a game. So I would recommend being online. Once the shaders are downloaded, though, it doesn't need to do it again. So if you download the shaders for Wave Race, for example, you don't need to have that downloaded every single time. It's on your system memory. So at some point after you play all your games, you know, downloading shaders isn't going to be a thing. just to tell you how it works out. But everything else, it's straight up what you see is what you get. Like I said, runs exactly like it would be running on a Genesis. This is done via software emulation. I know FPGA is all the rage right now, but people also need to realize that hardware emulation is also not cycle accurate. Irregardless of what companies like Analog want to tell you, they are also not perfect. Another downside is something like an analog, for example, you have to have a bunch of different systems. This is all your systems in one console, which is extraordinarily convenient. And outside of needing the separate modules, you're basically good to go. You just have one box, right? But besides that, besides the added cost of continually having to go ahead and get another console and maybe an HDMI splitter or whatever have you, uh, the downside obviously is it's not really rendering things the way you think. So if I'm running an N64 game, for example, right? The N64 game is actually being rendered out. So you have polygons and it's rendering out the graphics. The reason why the graphics look sometimes more accurate on something like an Analog 3D, which is their Nintendo 64, is that it's not rendering anything out. So I'm not a technical person when it comes to this sort of stuff, but I'll explain it the best way I know how. It's basically putting the pixels on screen in the way that it knows that the N64 would put pixels on screen. So instead of rendering the game and rendering the polygons and rendering textures, it's just straight up like knowing where a pixel should be based on what the data is showing on the back end. Hopefully that makes sense. It barely makes sense to me. But it's a reason why sometimes it looks more like what you think. But then the downside is that, like that way of doing things will never be able to net you like higher res graphics or anything like that. Not that this system's doing higher res graphics, but you get my point. When you're actually rendering it on via software, you can technically do something at a higher resolution than the stock resolution because you're rendering it out at a higher resolution. The polygons are actually there and you're rendering it out properly. If you're doing it that way, it's only knowing what the pixels should be. So there is no higher resolution. There is no anything. The performance will be exactly what, it thinks the 64 would pump out. And that's about it. Again, it can look great. I'm not shitting on it. I've had analog systems and they're fine for what they are. Um, and I think most people wouldn't be able to tell a difference regardless. But, just telling you some positives and negatives of each, right? Polymega doesn't have to worry about any of that. Technically, if you had this along with a Genesis side by side, just like with the analog, all three would be off slightly over time, but it's nothing that you're going to notice while you're playing. I'm very particular when it comes to speed and timing and lag and all that type of stuff, and this console is perfect in that regard. So that's Genesis. Let's play something a little bit more intense since we've just been doing a bunch of Saturn stuff. Let's do Saturn. We can do a tried and true Daytona USA. And since I have a proper BIOS, I get a proper BIOS. I have a Japanese one on there as well for Japanese games. And as you can see, it runs it just fine. Saturn's a big deal for me too because, Saturn's a big deal for me too because Saturn, at least in the past, was a little bit more difficult to emulate, and even today on certain hardware, it can cause a lot of people problems. It's not exactly reliable, but the Polymega does everything perfectly. You don't have to worry from one game to another if it's going to work or not. It just works. This is what happens when you're not really paying attention. Anyway, you get to see it works, right? And then when you're out, hit the Polymega button, and you can just back out. You can also set your virtual display, so this is kind of interesting, right? Right now I have it as a 1:1 aspect ratio, which is a standard 4:3, and then I have it with scan lines, light scan lines. Visually, I feel like this works better for me. However, if you want to, you can turn the scan lines off. You can make them heavier. You can make them really heavy. You can give it like a blur, as if you're doing like, I don't know, RF signal or something. You can give it like a bowed look, like a CRT. There's a bunch of different options, which is interesting. Um, for me, I like 4:3 zoom for Saturn. That's normal 4:3, which I guess you could argue looks a little sharper. Uh, um, please don't ever play like this. Anyway, I can leave it at standard 4:3. Actually, it looks pretty nice. What do you want to do? If you want it across all games, you hit start and then hit save and exit. If you just want it for this game in particular, you just do save and exit. I'll save it across all games, and then it tells you it's been updated for all of Sega Saturn. And then save and exit. So when you go back, your settings will have upgraded. It looks great. Again, some of the simple joys of software emulation is that you can subtly mess with some of the graphics like that, right? It's not going to upres anything though past typical resolutions, but it's also going to make sure that those pixels are a lot sharper than they would have been coming out of your normal hardware. Anyway, get out of here. I'll show you 64 next, because I know that's kind of hot right now because of the analog 3D. So I'm going to do one of my favorites. Now this is cool. So I have the original Japanese release that has 4 players. No, I didn't mean to say 4 players. It has a rumble pack, which the US version didn't have rumble pack compatibility. There's multiple different Japanese versions, by the way. So I can play either one. So when you select it, if you've uploaded multiple different versions, it allows you to pick which version you want, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to disconnect the Genesis controller, obviously. And I have my 64 pad, which is kind of like a Hori controller. Take the Genesis module out of here. Put the 64 one in. This is just so I can plug in the 64 controller. Technically, if I wanted to, I could use a USB style controller like the one that it comes with and play the game that way. You can technically play any game from any system with any controller. So you might not have all the buttons you need, but technically, like last night, I was playing NES games with a Genesis controller just because I like the D-pad. So yeah. So because I can use a real Rumble Pack from Nintendo, I will have proper Rumble. So again, 64 takes a little bit longer to load, just because it's making sure that you have those files streamed in. So it's verified that all the shaders are there. There you go. That's interesting. I want to see something. Hold on. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, that's the first 64 game that I've noticed that didn't feel right. So the Rumble Pack version of Wave Race felt slow to me. Maybe because I know you can make custom profiles for the racer. Maybe someone had changed that because it does bring over the save data. I'll have to check. I wasn't really paying attention to that. It's the first time I booted that one up. But typically, 64 is literally always perfect. I just happened to pick the one apparently that was odd. I can go back and just see. It's curious. That felt slow to me. But again, every once in a while you might come across something like that. It is software emulation. Just as hardware emulation has its own problems, sometimes you can come across its own problems with software, but that shouldn't be the case. This can play everything from 007 to Killer Instinct, all the difficult games. I'm curious. No, it's stock. How interesting. It just felt different. Maybe it's just me. All this feels normal. That looks normal. 2, 1. Yeah, this part here just feels really clunky. Weird. Maybe there's a compatibility problem with that game. Very interesting. But anyway, so moving on though, anything you want to play, like again, I can do something a little bit more involved just to show that that was probably just a software compatibility issue and not anything to do with hardware. What am I thinking of here? Do Killer Instinct. As you can see, it's like perfect. So yeah, except for apparently Wave Race 4 player or for Rumble Rumble Pack Edition or what it's called. Everything else is fine. I've gone through a lot of these games already, so I know they work well. There you go. Exit out of here. Now I'm going to show you what's interesting about this. Yeah. So this is what sets the system apart from, say, something like an analog or like that's like a Mister or like the Super Station 1 that is being made right now. It's it's the UI. So you have pictures, you actually know what you're selecting. So if you don't know the Japanese, for example, of something, you can just recognize it by the picture. This is really important for like PC Engine games and Sega Saturn games where like I'm not gonna recognize like what the hell that is. If someone said, "Hey, what is Itio Shigasato no Basuri no whatever the fuck," you're not gonna know what this is, but you might recognize that box. And at the very least, you can look at the screenshots and have an idea what it is, and it even tells you about the game, who made it, who developed it, what the genre is. So now I know it's a fishing game. I don't need to know anything else. Just look at that and go, oh, okay, cool, fishing game. And I can try it out. What's also cool, so let's just say you really liked Killer Instinct, right? You can see other games that are similar to it. And you have to remember it's pulling from the database. So it's not just other games you own, it's just other games, period. So if you're trying to find other titles that are akin to that, so let's just say you're playing a shoot 'em up and you want to see what other type of similar shoot 'em ups there are so you can expand your collection, it tells you here because the entire database is on the system. So all the games for all the system that it plays are already on here. So you can go ahead and then go check them out. And if you own them, you can obviously play them because they're already on the system. And then uh, if you're curious about like who published it and other games that they published, I mean, obviously everybody knows Nintendo games, but they're there. Or the developer Rare. Now it'll show you all the different games by Rare. There might be ones here that you're not familiar with, like Jeopardy. apparently on the NES they made. And that might make you go into a game that you're not previously familiar with. Maybe you didn't know that Rare made Wizards and Warriors or Captain Skyhawk. Maybe all you're familiar with is Conquer and Banjo and the typical games like that. But now you can go ahead and check out some other older games across all these different systems. And then another really nice feature that I like as well is that this allows you to go ahead and kind of go back in time. So, what other games were being released in 1996? Like, okay, Andretti Racing, I've played that many times before. That's cool. Came out the same year. And you can kind of get a visual snapshot of what the release structure was like then. So, Panzer Dragoon 2's Way came out, Thunder Strike came out, D, and it's cool because even though this has really nothing to do with Killer Instinct, it kind of gives you an idea of what was being released around the same time across various different consoles. Like you could have been at a Blockbuster or a Toys R Us and had your decision between Fighting Vipers and, Killer Instinct, for example, which is cool. Like Dark Forces came out that year. Like little things that you wouldn't know. Now you can kind of go in here and get a better idea. And that's basically what you're paying for. You're paying for the UI. So that is why I would personally recommend the system. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into. Um, I would pass the Genesis controller and past the 64 controller. I would definitely bring your own controller. Do not sell your originals. Like I have an original Super Famicom controller over there because the one that they give you is terrible. And you also have to know that you're going in and things are going to be, kind of expensive. You have to buy all the modules that you want to play. And while technically you don't have a module for every single system because you have CD-based consoles, which are just a CD-based console. There's no module to go along with them. So Sega CD, Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx CD, PlayStation, Saturn, all play right out of the box, right? But if you want to play NES games or SNES games, you need those modules. And then last but not least, you have to recognize that outside of CD-based games, which of course you can just burn, um, you're going to need original cartridges. Now, there are cart dumpers out there that work with the Polymega. So for ultra rare games, so say Genesis, if I can remember where it is. We didn't have Musha, okay? That was a cart dump. So if you want to invest in a cart dumper, you can do that. Again, it's one game at a time. There's no ROM dumps on this system. You can't load the micro SD card with a bunch of ROMs and just have yourself a field day. And to that extent, I will be very, very honest with you. Um, like burned CDRWs will be your friend, and you will be doing that a lot. And they do take a while to load up. It's not going to be like the Cart Wars instant. It's going to be, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the game. Some of them are obviously quicker than others if there's not a lot of data on it. But for like a PlayStation Saturn game, yeah, about 3 to 5 minutes. So that's 3 to 5 minutes plus you burning. It takes a while. But if this is what you're looking for, if this is right for you, it's a really great, convenient way to play all these different games on one console and to have a proper UI. I can be honest with you, man. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I get fatigued by just looking at a text list. If I just had a bunch of text, I end up choosing nothing. This has actually got me to play more games because I'm seeing visually all these games that I want to play instead of just a list. Because if I have a list, then I either turn off the console or I just go ahead and play the ones that I'm familiar with. I don't go out and play new things, if that makes any sense. Where is with the Polymega, I'm doing that all the time. And like I said, with the exception of apparently Wave Race, uh, Rumble Edition. This plays everything perfectly fine. So if you have any questions, leave questions in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have on the console, if it's worth it, how to go about it, you know, what CPU to get if you want to replace the CPU so that 64 emulation's a bit better. My friend has not done the CPU upgrade, by the way, and he thinks it's just fine. You just need to load the shaders. I feel personally that the 64 basically becomes perfect with the CPU upgrade, so your mileage may vary on that. But yeah, let me know what you think. Either way, Merry Christmas. If you've been here on the channel for a while, thank you. And past that, I'll see you guys next time.